I call the member for Leppington.
Speaker, I rise today to address the deeply concerning situation in the occupied Palestinian territory and the escalating situation in Lebanon. These issues weigh heavily on the global community, including many of us here in Australia who are closely watching these events unfold from afar. Last week I had the privilege of meeting with Chris Sidoti, a member of the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in Israel. The Commission has shed light on significant and ongoing violations of international humanitarian law and human rights. The Commission's mandate is substantial. Among its many tasks, it seeks to examine the broader patterns of violence and discrimination in the region and to ensure that third-party states, like Australia, comply with international humanitarian law. This includes obligations under Common Article 1 of the Geneva Convention, which compels states to refrain from aiding or assisting in the commission of internationally wrongful acts, particularly in relation to occupied territories. The Commission's findings highlighted several key issues that demand our attention. Since its establishment in 2019, it has found that unlawful settlements, forced displacement and a range of human rights violations plague the region. In a statement released earlier this month, the Commission accused Israel of carrying out a concerted policy of destroying the Gazan health system. In the Commission's own words, Israeli security forces have deliberately killed, detained and tortured medical personnel and targeted medical vehicles. These ongoing breaches of international law cannot be ignored, and they compel us as Australians to examine our role on the global stage. One of the central recommendations made by the Commission is that third-party states, including Australia, ensure that they are not complicit in these violations. This means taking concrete steps to avoid aiding or assisting in actions that contribute to unlawful settlements, forced displacements or other breaches of international humanitarian law. Respect for human rights is not a distant, abstract concept. It is fundamental to how we as a nation engage with the world. The people of New South Wales and indeed Australia have long raised concerns about the treatment of the Palestinian people and the lack of protection for international human rights. We are also horrified at the actions of groups like Hamas, whose violent tactics exacerbate the suffering of both Israelis and Palestinians. The deliberate targeting of civilians, use of human shields and disregard for the sanctity of human life further inflame tensions in the region and hinder the path to a peaceful resolution. Indeed, the Commission has deemed the actions of Hamas on October 7 to be war crimes. If we are to genuinely stand for justice, we must condemn all forms of violence and demand accountability from all parties. Across New South Wales, including in my own electorate of Leppington, many people feel frustrated at the perceived lack of action from federal representatives on these pressing international issues. They want assurance that Australia is not complicit in the violation of human rights, whether through the approval of military exports and components to Israel or through diplomatic inaction. The United Nations and organisations such as UNICEF have warned of the devastating humanitarian crises unfolding in both Palestine and Lebanon. Again, these are not abstract concepts. They represent the real and ongoing suffering of millions of people. Australia has a role to play in ensuring that aid reaches those who need it most and that we support efforts to bring about a lasting resolution to these conflicts. I want to emphasise that this is not about taking sides in a complex and deeply rooted conflict. This is about upholding universal human rights, international law and the dignity of all people. Whether it is condemning the illegal settlements in the occupied territories or denouncing the violent actions of terrorist groups like Hamas, we must be consistent in our pursuit of justice. Australia cannot afford to be complicit in these violations, and we must ensure that our actions reflect our values of fairness, respect and humanity.